Welcome into Locked On Knicks. You've probably heard the names Zach Edey and Ryan Dunn connected to the Knicks quite a bit. Well, we're going to talk about them again today with our guest Prez and get his take on it, plus some of Prez's favorite players for the Knicks in this draft right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, because even during the off season, we're still here for you guys 5 days a week. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And I'll be joined in just a second by Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and by Prez of The Strickland, who is one of my favorite draft writers, not just because he writes for my site, but because he just does his homework. He always has really interesting takes, and he's good at describing guys in a very digestible way. And I think that's come through in these pods so far. Of course, if you haven't already, go back in your feed or go to our YouTube channel or whatever, and go check out the first two parts, because we did two other parts of this series as well, where we talk about a number of other prospects, including some guys that could be kind of home run hits for the Knicks, the Duke guys, all kinds of stuff. This episode focuses more on Zach Edey and Ryan Dunn. So let's get into them and then some of Prez's favorites at the end of the episode. Speaking of players that the Knicks maybe would look at the center position, I can't believe we've gotten this far in the discussion. This is the first time this guy's coming up. He's the ultimate. If I was looking at this from a capitalist perspective, we should have led with this guy, because he's the most polarizing player in the entire draft, and the one most likely to get us precious clicks and listens on this episode. But, I won't be called a shill now because we didn't lead with him.
Right.
Zach
it's time
Edey.
for Kai Soda. Oh, Zach Edey. Gotcha.
Exactly. No, last year would have been Kai Soda.
Right.
This year it's Zach Edey. Prez, where do you fall on Zach Edey? I feel like I have to ask everybody's opinion on this, because everybody seems to have a slightly different one. But when I did the show with No Ceilings with Corey and Albert, they were pretty bullish on him. They were pretty in on him as a NBA prospect, especially Corey. I think was very much buying into him as a guy that can survive at the NBA level, and mostly on the fact that he's a really, really hard worker. Like he'll keep trying to get better. Like, I don't think his physical limitations are that big of a deal. Sometimes you watch him and you do think that. Like, sometimes you watch him in a pick and roll coverage, like he looks pretty good, and then other times you watch him and you're like, bro, it's like you're wearing cement shoes, and it's tough to say whether that was just he was told to drop ultra far back just by his coaches in drop coverage, or if he just legitimately was that slow-footed that he couldn't get back to where he needed to get. But to me, when I watch him, I'm like, I feel like I can see where, especially if you've got if he's playing off the bench and he's covering a pick and roll with Deuce McBride, you only have to buy Deuce that extra little half-second window to clear that screen. So if he could just shade up just enough with that 7'4" length and the 7'10" wingspan or whatever the hell he has, and just put enough of a hand in someone's face to at least deter them from taking a shot until Deuce can get over that screen, then, and, not totally lose his man behind him in the process, and, use defensive timing to be good enough to, if his guy gets behind him, get a hand on the ball as it's getting passed down, whatever. I could see where it could work, but, and certainly on offense, I think he speaks for himself. And rebounding, he was dominant in college, and, I could see a world where he really works out at the NBA level, but I could also see where he just ends up in the same, basket of discarded toys that every single, it seems like, guy of that size ends up, that's not named Victor Wembanyama. So I don't know. Where do you stand on Zach Edey as an NBA prospect going into this draft?
So I started out being a Zach Edey hater. I was like, he's too big to play a multitude of pick and roll coverages. and I don't know if he'll be able to do the stuff he does in college on offense in the NBA. And then I became Edey curious because not only was he just doing this stuff to kids in college, but he was like destroying them, like in a historical way. Like the only other guys who have put up that kind of, who have just issued that level of destruction upon college basketball are guys like Zion and Anthony Davis and Steph Curry. Like if you just look at measures like BPM and like pretty much all of his stats, they're all like historically insane. And obviously a lot of that is because the guy is 7'5", 300 pounds and has enough skill to hit baby hooks with touch and, you know, hit free throws, and he gets a zillion free throw shots. So I was like, okay, he can do that to college kids, but like, is he going to be able to bully NBA players? Maybe not as much, but probably yes, actually. Like, he's 300 fucking pounds. Like, Isaiah Hartenstein is not stopping him from getting to the hoop on a post up. He's just not. Like, it's just not going to happen. So to me, that changed kind of the starting ground for the evaluation. Just kind of accepting that is the fact that he's going to be the strongest player on the court 9 times out of 10 in the NBA and can hit his free throws. And he's a better passer than he showed at Purdue. He didn't really have much reason to pass at Purdue, but we've seen him on like Team Canada where he's a little bit less purely scoring focused, and he's not afraid of kicking it out and stuff like that. So my baseline for him was now, okay, this guy is probably going to be good at offense in the NBA. It's just a question of, is his defense good enough to let him be good at offense on the court for 10 minutes a game or for 30 minutes a game? And that I don't have the answer to. He is like you pointed out, his deep drop just being his thing. Like it made sense at Purdue, right? Like those mid-range shots to kill deep drop centers are tough in the NBA. Devin Booker is great at them. Jalen Brunson is great at them. Nobody in the NCAA is that great at them, except for like maybe 5 players, right? So like it's, the math says you should do what Edey did, and it worked, right? That's why they were so ridiculous all the time. But you know, look at the championship game. It was one of the few times he had to play real pick and roll defense against ball handlers who could kill a drop if he just fully went to the charge circle without caring about the ball handler. And then all of a sudden, Zach Edey for the first time was like, oh, shoot, I don't know how far up to go, how far back to go. I don't know if he's going to pass it, lob it, shoot it. And, you know, he was great in that championship game on offense, but he got killed on defense. So he really is starting from scratch on defense. So the big question to me is like, if I'm a team and I think I can get his pick and roll defense to passable, I'm drafting him because he has the potential to be really, really special on offense. And you don't need him to be a all defender, all defense level player. You just need him to be like, all right. And part of that is his development. Part of that may be getting certain kinds of players around him as well, right? But like the offense, like he's to me is the highest upside guy in the class, because there's like a world that is not super unlikely where he's scoring like 25 a game sooner rather than later. It's just a question of like, if he's gotten to that point, you think his defense probably is good enough, because the days of like, you know, Enes Kanter getting 25 minutes a game, those days are long gone for the most part. There's too much talent in the NBA. You can't have a bad defensive center when offenses are this good.
What do you think makes or breaks him defensively? Is it as simple as foot speed, or is it more complicated than that?
I think it's a mix of foot speed, athleticism gains. Maybe it's, you know, a mix of like getting stronger. Maybe it's a little losing weight. Part of it is also just learning how to use your size, right? Like he's never going to be the fastest guy, right? Like Mitch is faster than him, even at his biggest. But like one thing Mitch is great at is like using his immense wingspan to sort of like disguise whether he's going to guard the ball handler more or the roll man more. And, you know, when you have a 7'10" wingspan like Edey, that should help, even if you're really slow. in terms of foot speed. So there's a couple ways he could do it, but I don't know. It's a worthwhile bet. For the record, I'd be thrilled if the Knicks took him, just because we seem to be really special at teaching big men how to do things like that. So this kind of applies to all the centers in this draft. I just instantly give them like, yeah, like I'll if the Knicks take any of these centers, I'm like, cool, yeah, like we're apparently great at developing centers, so why not take any of these talented guys, right? Edey, Holmes, Ware, Flip, Missy, like, yeah, whatever. Bring all 5 of them. I don't care.
I think it's one of those things where, to Alex's point, they're just not. I cannot think of someone who looks like Zach Edey who's succeeded. But then you also remember there's like in the last 15 years, there's been 25 people to walk the earth that look like Zach Edey, period. So it's a small group to pick from. And like when you have a sample that small, like there just could be an outlier, and maybe he's that guy. And certainly offensively, to your point, there aren't a lot of questions there.
All right, we'll be right back in with Prez. But first, I got to remind you that today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the PrizePicks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. So if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
I'll finish up on this and then maybe we could like do like a quick hitter on like anyone else we haven't mentioned that you wanted to talk about. But Ryan Dunn is the only other name du jour that we haven't gotten to. I know there's been some reporting. I know Mike Scott at Hoops Hype said like there are a lot of like, or some amount of consensus that he's maybe the guy the Knicks are most likely to go after in this draft. Obviously he worked out for the Knicks. What do you think of his chances of being an effective offensive player in the NBA, and I guess most specifically an effective shooter, given that there obviously aren't a lot of questions about what he brings to the table defensively, but feel free to get into how special he could be on that end too.
Yeah, he's Dunn's an interesting guy. If you look at his like high school clips, he looks kind of like a normal guard or small forward, and his shot looks like fine. And then he grew a lot, and I don't know what they was doing or he was doing with a jumper, and it got worse. And on top of that, at UVA they run a tight ship in terms of roles. It's almost like Coach Cal at Kentucky historically, where like you just have your role and you don't deviate from it, right? Like, Trey Murphy comes to mind as somebody who was like, they probably could have let him shoot a little bit more, right? He's really talented, but they didn't because whatever, even though he was older. So I bring that up with Ryan Dunn because, like, yeah, there's an outside chance that like somewhere deep in his brain are the memories of like dribbling the ball and not being a 55% free throw shooter and being confident from 3 and not taking 6 field goal attempts per game and half of those being in transition. And it sounds like hating, and I am hating a little bit, but like there could be the perfect storm of like growth spurt, strict coach, strict team, and unwillingness to freestyle on the court that can be loosened a little bit as he develops in the NBA. That's not to say, he's going to come to the Knicks and immediately like show proficiency at those things, but there could very well be a path to getting him to where he needs to be at those things, right? You don't need him to be hot sauce or Dante DiVincenzo. You just need him to basically like hit from the corners and be able to do like a basic handoff or like a 2 dribble move to the paint with the Euro step. Like the bare minimum stuff for like a larger wing who is playing off of 3 or 4 other players. And given his defensive gifts, that's absolutely a worthwhile flyer. His defense is extraordinary, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. He's just good at everything, and he's incredible. So if the Knicks want to take a swing on Dunn, it would be scary to me if he was their only pick, because I'm like, damn, like, you just went to the store and bought a lotto ticket. Like, sure, in theory it could work, but mathematically speaking, it's probably not going to work, right? But if you took Dunn and another player we like or someone else we've talked about, I'm pretty much giving that draft an A+. Like, because Dunn as a flyer is as good as you can possibly get, specifically for this Knicks team. The flyer is a guy who won't need the ball a lot, who's incredible at defense. Like, yes, sign me up for that gamble 10 times out of 10.
So we've made it pretty far into this, and as much as Gavin and I keep talking about how, like, oh, it feels like we're cramming for an exam and we haven't gotten to form that many of our own opinions. We've kind of just thrown a bunch of names that we're curious about at you, and not let you just kind of cook on your own as far as guys that you're most interested in. So out of anyone that we haven't mentioned on your behalf, let's just first start with the 2 first-round picks. I mean, obviously we can sort of treat them as equals since they're back-to-back. So who are some of the guys that we haven't talked about already? And, you could get just like a few quick hitters in here if you want, but a few other names that interest you at those 24 and 25 spots that you think might reasonably be available to the Knicks there.
There's a couple of guys. I'll just go really fast. Guys I like in no particular order. AJ Mitchell, really great point guard from a really bad school of basketball in a really bad conference of basketball. I think that I trust his stats, not the competition he played against. He destroyed who he played against. You can only play who you play against. So I don't know. I just buy his whole package. He's one of the few rookies who I think like would be able to do a bang up job as a year 1 backup point guard. 6'5", can shoot, can dribble, can draw fouls, can pass, has craft. Better than people think on defense. Not a pushover, not a twig. Good strength. So he's cool. Bub Carrington, a little bit more of a, I don't think he'll be there at 24, 25, but he might be. He's always mocked 20 to Cleveland. He's like a combo guard who can probably, maybe just the fact that he's 6'5" with a 6'8" wingspan and probably the best pull-up jump shooter in this draft. If that player turns into an actual point guard, then all of a sudden you're like, why was he not a consensus top 10 pick? And he was in the 90th percentile in all of college basketball for pick and roll efficiency, including passes out of the pick and roll, despite being 18 for the entire year. Which is stunning, actually. So he'd be really cool. I mentioned Edey. I don't think he's a guy who you have to take in the 20s. I think if you want him, you can take him in the 2nd round. But Melvin Ajinka from France, 6'8", probably to me after Dunn, the best 1st round-ish perimeter defender in the draft. Legit 6'8", really good shooter. Got a little bit of handle too. So, and he's not that old. He's going to be a couple months from turning 20 on draft day, I think. So he's really talented. Someone else who I've tweeted about lately is Jalen Wells, who's kind of an amazing story. Played D2 in California, then transferred after 2 years to Washington State. One of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the draft, and he's 6'8", and he's really smart on both ends. Like, that's the sales pitch right there. Like, you can plug him in, he'll be good on day 1. Tristan Da Silva, he's probably going to get picked in the late teens. He's older, he's 23. He's like a small forward. This is going to sound like a disrespectful comparison, but like that dude from Detroit, Fontecchio, he kind of reminds me of him. And you're like, wow, who's this random big white dude who's like splashing everything and like kind of fritzy on defense over here, right? So like he's he's pretty good. So those are a couple of players who I'm personally a big fan of, in addition to some of the ones we've mentioned before.
I think Alex was getting at this, but at 38, any other lottery tickets, or do you think you just sort of hit on everyone who you could even see there?
There's definitely there's a lot of players who you could get there who could be good. One other guy who jumps out to me is Adam Bona from UCLA. He's a center. He's 6'10", so he's a little undersized, but he's really long arms, 7'4" wingspan. He had a 40-inch vert at the combine. He's not skinny. The guy is like murders the rim when he dunks. And because UCLA was kind of a mess, they had him like posting up, which was terrible for them winning college basketball games, but was good for Adam Bona learning how to pass the ball. So like he's got a little bit of skill there on offense. Not that he's going to be doing anything crazy, like far from a unicorn, far from a, passing maestro like Hartenstein. But just in terms of like being able to do one or two dribbles and Euro step or dunk on somebody, like he can do that kind of stuff. So he's kind of boring, but I'm a big fan of his.
I will be right back in to hear about Prez's favorite players for the Knicks that we haven't talked about yet in this 3-part series. So definitely hang on for that. But first, I got to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cool.
Nice.
Well, we are safe to say big fans of yours, Prez, as usual, coming in, giving us a great draft all around look. I see the work personally that you put into this every year, so I can always personally attest. You're someone that definitely does their homework, so I always very much love hearing the overall fruits of your labor, because you start doing this pretty much the second that the one draft is done. You give yourself maybe a couple weeks and you start looking into the next draft. So always appreciative of you helping us cram for the draft exam, so to speak, like a week in advance. Although actually it was kind of nice this year. We started talking about draft way later because the Knicks were playing way later. So that was nice. That's always good. But at any rate, Prez, thanks so much for popping on. Of course, you find all of your work over at the Strickland, which is the strict.land, which I plug at the top of every show, thanks to my association with the website. But already you have 3.5 pieces out just on the your player profiles that you did. I'll preemptively plug the piece that you call Perrin, which is your ranking system where you try to find players that would be most appealing to Walt Perrin, the head of scouting for the Knicks, and the Knicks themselves via a very scientific scoring method. So that's coming up soon. The disrespectful comps, which always breaks the internet and is our consistently most viewed piece every single year.
It's one of my favorite pieces of writing, just not even in sports, every year.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm excited.
So that's on the horizon.
It's my Super Bowl.
It is. The opus every single year that we build towards. But is there anything else you wanted to
promote? Do you blow kisses in the air when you finish writing it? What happens? Do you smoke a cigarette? What happens?
No, it's more like hitting publish is like when a cowboy in an old Western just kisses the gun before he shoots someone.
Well, at any rate, Prez, is there anything else you want to promote before we sign off here and start taking that last week trudge towards the draft here?
No, I think we covered it. We got some cool stuff coming out. This year we're complementing these pieces by having like Twitter videos and posts on Instagram, including videos and graphics. Shout out to Zach. And posts on Reddit as well on r/New York Knicks, where we're cross sharing a lot of our draft content. So there's some popping discussion happening there on Reddit if you're a Redditor. So lots of places to engage if you're interested in this sort of stuff. And if you just were waiting for the finals to finish before you started thinking about all this, there's a lot of stuff already out on the strict.land for you to catch up on. So plenty of leisure time reading.
Yep. And of course, make sure to follow Prez for all the last minute musings on Twitter at _Presidente with Z. So definitely make sure to follow him there. Prez, thanks so much for joining us, dude. And we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. But just keeping up in general with you leading up to the draft and stuff. But thanks so much for all the insights today and helping get us ready for this draft.
You got it.